Now, when George Orwell wrote that, he was talking about World War II. He wrote, quote, "The Germans and the Japanese lost the war quite largely because the rulers were unable to see facts which were plain to any dispassionate eye." And then he said, and this is one of my favorite quotes ever, "To see what is in front of one's nose needs a constant struggle." And that's the lesson for me. We all saw it happening, and we all refused to see it. And maybe some of you are exceptions, but as a general note, and it can be tough in the world we're in, especially, I mean, Orwell didn't even know, I mean, he didn't have social media to deal with, right? He didn't have Fox. But to see what is in front of one's nose needs a constant struggle. And like, sometimes the reality is right there.
All right, Republicans tore into Democrats for boycotting that U.S. Senate hearing yesterday on former President Biden's cognitive decline and the alleged cover-up. Senator, you were in the room. Let's first take a look at this.
Not a single Democrat is here today because not a single one of them gives a damn about the fact that they lied to the American people for 4 years.
We need to know who was in charge during the last months of the Biden administration. Was it his wife, his chief of staff, nameless others?
Did Joe Biden actually assent to the use of the autopen and all? You think of all the people he pardoned, he granted clemency to: murderers, drug dealers, child rapists.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about what was the #1 story in this country, what everybody was talking about, at least before the Israel-Iran conflict popped off and before the left-wing domestic terrorists started committing acts of violence and causing chaos and destruction over the fact that they don't like the mass deportations, okay? The #1 story was Biden's cognitive decline, okay? Because Jake Tapper, a.k.a. Snake Tapper, had decided to write a book exposing Joe Biden's cognitive decline, and he has been on a tour ever since, basically trying to talk about what he found, right? Even though he participated in the cover-up, right? He participated in the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline and decided to try to make some money off of the lies that he participated in, okay? I mean, it really is a great example of how the Democrat Party, they are a party full of snakes, okay? They're all out for themselves, trying to make money for themselves. And liberals feel betrayed, right? They feel very, very, very betrayed because you have liberals now going off on Jake Tapper for exposing Biden's cognitive decline, because that has led to a congressional investigation, a congressional hearing that we're going to talk about here. But yeah, liberals are not happy with Jake Tapper for exposing Joe Biden's cognitive decline. They are very, very, very upset. Take a look.
But right now, I really don't like you. I think you're doing a disservice to Joe and also to the American people. When are you going to examine, what is going on with Trump? Joe Biden conducted himself for 4 years taking care of the United States. He took meetings, he went overseas, he negotiated with other leaders. This president has been pure chaos, which indicates to me that there is something wrong with him. We will never get a straight answer on his medical examinations, what medication he is on. And yet you have gone after Joe Biden with a vengeance that I'm very disappointed in you. I enjoy watching your show, but not anymore. And I think right now you ought to start writing another book examining Trump and how erratic and what he is doing, calling out the National Guard, the Marines, and everybody. When has a president ever done that? It's pure erratic.
Okay, Sarah, there in Virginia. Thanks. Mr. Tapper.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah, as you know from watching my show on CNN, we cover President Trump every day for 2 hours, every day from 5 to 7 Eastern, and we cover all the things you talk about. In terms of the current president's behavior, we have covered times that he has confused Nancy Pelosi with Nikki Haley. I think some of the questions about President Trump's behavior have more to do with personality than with cognitive decline. But obviously, whatever lessons we've learned from covering President Biden, we would apply to any politician, any future politician or present politician. So I'm sorry if I'm disappointing you by covering President Biden, but journalists, we are supposed to cover stories that we think the American people have a right to know, that we think will enhance their understanding of how the country's run. And I think Alex and I are proud of this book. But if you turn on CNN later today, tomorrow, the next day, you'll see we're continuing to focus on the today in our TV coverage. I think it's just a natural result of being an adult to realize shortcomings or failings. I mean, I feel this way about, you know, the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq story. I was a reporter that was skeptical of the WMD claim, but certainly, you know, in hindsight, I wish I had been more skeptical. And there are any number of stories along those lines. Certainly when it comes to President Biden's acuity, it's an issue that I had covered. I had asked him about in September 2020 when I interviewed him. I asked him if he would pledge to be transparent about his health, and he said he would. And there are a number of other times that I had covered it or asked people who worked for him about his age. But sure, yeah, I mean, I wish I had covered it more aggressively. I can't imagine that there are many reporters, with a handful of exceptions, that don't feel that way, knowing, you know, as soon as the debate made it clear, oh my God, look how bad his acuity is, at least at this moment. I'm sure most reporters feel that.
Yeah, so you're seeing that you're that. Okay, I think that Snake Tapper is trying to save his career, his dying career. And you know that his career is dying because not only is he losing viewership on CNN, right? His viewership is falling. He's also not selling any books, right? Nobody is really interested in this book in which Jake Tapper tells us the obvious, right? Things that we all knew at the time that they said were conspiracy theories, right? They were cheap fakes, okay? And that is why you're seeing these embarrassing numbers come in, right? It's been like, what, 3 or 4 weeks, right, since this book has been out? And apparently it sold only 8,500 copies in the third week, okay? That's about half of what it sold the prior week. Total sales come to 7,645, according to NPD BookScan on Amazon. The corrupt account of Biden's time in office has fallen to number 42. It should be out of the top 100 by next week. Okay, yeah, so this book is flopping, right? This book is tanking. It hasn't even sold 100,000 copies. And I'm pretty sure that Jake Tapper has gotten over what? Probably 10, 20 million impressions, right? You think about all the shows this man has been on, right? He's been on every show that you can think of pushing this book, okay? And he hasn't even sold 100,000 copies. This is terrible, absolutely terrible for Jake Tapper. But you know what? He deserves it because, again, he participated in the cover-up. Had he wrote this book, I don't know, when it actually mattered, right, when Joe Biden was president, okay, then who knows? Maybe it would have sold a lot. Maybe he would have sold 1 million copies. But because he waited until it was too late, when it didn't really matter anymore, yeah, that's why the book is flopping. Everybody knew that Biden was cognitively declining, apparently except the Democrats and the liberals, right? Or put it this way, they all knew, they just refused to accept reality, or they just flat out lied about it. So again, that's why you have Congress investigating the cover-up, okay, of Biden's mental state, okay? They had a congressional hearing that Democrats decided that they wanted to boycott because Democrats don't like dealing with reality. So without further ado, let's learn a little bit more about this hearing.
There was a conspiracy to hide the president's true condition by his family, by his staff, by the media, and many elected officials. Biden, his family, and his team let their self-interest and their fear of another Trump term justify an attempt to put an at times addled old man in the Oval Office for 4 more years. This was a constitutional crisis, bigger than President Biden, bigger than any single election.
President Biden's decline did not suddenly begin in June of 2024. It was a persistent and obvious truth that was evident for years to anyone who was willing to see it.
I believe there is a constitutional crisis. It's the collapse of Congress asserting its Article 1 authority to make decisions about the well-being of the American people. What we're doing right now won't help. It will not help.
The legacy media failed the American people. They failed to do their job. Many, rightly so, believe the media in this country is culpable in covering up the obvious decline of the 46th president of the United States. The scrutiny that was baselessly directed at President Trump during his first term was wholly absent from the media coverage of the Biden White House.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy part about liberals getting mad at Jake Tapper for covering Joe Biden's mental decline, but not Trump's. It's like, no. They tried to do that, right? Like they tried to run a narrative that Trump is mentally declining. I mean, they're still trying to do that today on MSNBC. It just doesn't stick. The reason why it doesn't stick is because it's clear that that's not happening, right? Like, I mean, it's just really that simple, right? It's very simple. They've tried that, right? They tried to say that Trump is losing it, right? That he has dementia, right? He has cognitive issues. They tried that. It didn't work, okay? Because, again, the American people can see that President Trump is just fine, right? With Biden, though, it was different because what we saw was the opposite of what the media was telling us, right? It was clear that Biden had lost a step. He had lost a few steps. And the media kept saying, no, that's not true. And again, that is the difference, right? That's the difference. So, liberals, they can try to run away from this, right? But ultimately, the reality is the reality. Democrats not showing up for this hearing doesn't really help them out because it just makes it seem like Democrats, once again, are refusing to acknowledge that, hey, this happened, right? And that they are responsible for the cover-up. The more they run away from this, the more they refuse to acknowledge it, the worse it makes them look. This is not going away. Okay, I know Democrats want it to go away, but it's not going away.
The media lacked any sense of curiosity that would naturally stem from what the public could see with their own eyes. Even in the face of deeply concerning and public signs of President Biden's mental and physical decline, legacy media outlets were silent.
A number of explosive exchanges during this hearing. Former President Biden's mental state, the focus of the Senate Judiciary Committee, holding its first of what could be several hearings on this. This one was Wednesday. You may have noticed you didn't hear much from Democrats there in those sound bites that we just played, and that's because they boycotted the hearing. After a couple of brief opening statements, Democrats walked out, calling this hearing a waste of time and a political undertaking. Republican senators, however, sticking to the script, echoing what President Trump said earlier in the day about his predecessor.
What he's done to this country is not him. He had no idea what was going on. Everybody knows that. It's other people. It's Lisa and this one and that. All these people, all this scum that was around the Oval, the Oval Office or around the beautiful Resolute desk telling this guy, here, do this, do that, and not even telling him. They just go over to the autopen and sign whatever the hell they wanted to sign.
Biden, some in his family and others within his inner circle have denied any claims of a cover-up or a decline in health that made him unfit to serve. News Nation contributor Sean Spicer, Republican strategist and former White House press secretary under President Trump, was one of the three witnesses at the hearing, and Sean is with us now. Thank you. It was interesting to watch. It was unfortunate Democrats weren't there to participate in the discussion more than they were. You worked, however, in the Trump administration, not for Biden. So why do you believe you were called to testify, and why did you agree to do it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was asked for two reasons. One is to help explain the flow of information and understanding that the senior staff would have had with the President of the United States. And secondly, and this goes back to the clip you just played a moment ago, is to juxtapose how the president was covered, President Trump that is, during his first term versus Biden. And I laid out for the committee 5 or 6 examples of where CNN, the Washington Post, NBC wrote stories without evidence claiming concerns about President Trump's mental and physical fitness for office. And yet those same outlets, as I mentioned in that clip, refused to acknowledge what the American people saw with their own eyes during the Biden administration.
So what next time? What lessons can the media, can the next administration or the current one learn from what we have seen play out in the last 4 years?
That's really a great question, because there is an element that we do need to look at the decision-making process, looking backwards to find out if certain decisions were made with the president's knowledge. But I think you're asking a really important question about going forward. And one of the points that I made to the committee was that when Karine Jean-Pierre and the Biden White House stripped 440 hard passes of independent journalists to cover the White House Correspondents Association didn't say a word, not a peep. And the idea of the White House stripping accountability away from independent journalists, they always love to cloak themselves in democracy and the First Amendment. But at the end of the day, that was a telltale sign. The White House did not want additional scrutiny or accountability when it came to asking questions of both Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, or senior staff. So that should have been a telltale sign. So that's number one. Number two, I think Dr. Kevin O'Connor, Biden's doctor, publicly stated that he was fit for office over and over again. Most of us with our own eyes, with no medical training, could see that he was suffering a decline. And so the question that should be asked going forward is, when the doctor certifies that, is there a degree of accountability that we can put the White House physician under to make sure that they're not just accepting what the president is saying, that it actually makes medical sense? So I think there's a few things that can be done going forward. But part of this, and this is the key question, one of the senators, I think it was Senator Cruz, showed a series of statements that Democratic senators and cabinet members made attesting to President Biden's physical and mental acuity. We know that was a lie. And I think the point is, at some point, if there's a cover-up, we need to do more to call it out.
Yeah, I mean, people need to be held accountable, right? I mean, that's basically what needs to happen, okay? I mean, because not only did they cover up Biden's mental decline, apparently they covered up him having cancer too, right? Because there's no way that Joe Biden did not have prostate cancer while in office, right? He definitely had it, and I think they covered that up. We need to hear from Karine Jean-Pierre. We need to hear from Jen Psaki. We need to hear from Biden's White House doctor, his physician. We need to hear from Jill, right? She needs to testify. Hunter needs to testify because, again, he was a part of running the White House as well, too. Apparently, they had crackheads running stuff in the White House. So, yeah, we need to hear about everybody, okay, or hear from everybody that was in Biden's inner circle before we move on, right? Because we got to know who was running the country, who was signing that autopen, right? This is not going away. I know Democrats wanted to go away, but it's not going away. And this is why, boycotting this, running away from it, running away from reality is just not a good move from Democrats, right? They just pull the wrong move every single time. The right move from Democrats, if they want this to go away, is to just acknowledge that they lied, acknowledge that they cover it up, take some accountability and responsibility for it, and then, it goes away. But the more that they continue to run away from it, the longer it's going to linger around, and it's going to linger around into the primaries, right? I guarantee you this question about Joe Biden is going to come up in the Democrat primary, and it's going to be a thorn in their side, particularly those who were close to Biden, okay, or associated with the Biden administration. If they decide to run, people are going to be asking questions about, hey, what did you see, right? And that is a very fair question, because it's a question that speaks to the judgment of a candidate, right? Of a politician, of a leader, right? If you are saying that you didn't notice Biden cognitively declining, that means that your judgment is bad, right? That or you're lying. Both pretty bad, right? Pretty bad. So it's better for you to come out and tell the truth, right? And to just own up to it. But Democrats will never do that, which again is why this story is not going away. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.